are going to join us here in a minute. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. Our meeting is streaming virtually, so just be aware of that. We've started, and I think, Greg, we could go ahead and stream the visual too, if you want to start us. Okay, thank you very much. Well, welcome everyone to today's State Historical Records Advisory Board meeting. Appreciate you all making the time. I know everybody's really busy. I talked to a couple of you as we're getting started. It's budget season for some of the counties and lots of other things going on. So I appreciate you making the time. I thought it'd be great if we started with a couple of introductions because we have some new faces with us today. So just say whatever you want, a little something about yourself. I'm Sarah Kuntz. I'm the state archivist and the deputy coordinator. Oops, I see Drew's going to have to log out and log back in. Okay. Drew will be back in a minute. Deputy SHRAB coordinator. And we do have a couple staff members with us today. So I thought I would let them say hello first before we do the SHRAB board members. So I'll start with Kelly, who joined our team just a couple months ago.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Young. I am the administrative assistant and HR liaison for the Archives and Records section. I'm going to be attending the meeting and taking notes and seeing what SHRAB is all about.
Thanks, Kelly. And Adrian?
Hi, good morning. I'm Adrian Burney. I'm the outreach coordinator for the State Archives, and I help manage the work we do with regional workshops and the Traveling Archivist Program.
Okay, and I see Brooke on there. Brooke, you want to introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. I'm Brooke Chuka. I work with Adrian in outreach. So I too do a lot with the TAP program and our SHRAB workshops. And I think that we're going to discuss those today. So yeah. Nice to see everyone again.
Thanks, Brooke. Okay, how about I'll just call people in the kind of the order that I see them, if that works. So Lynn, I see you first, actually, on the top row.
Good morning. I'm Lynn Gilliard, Tryon County Register of Deeds.
Thank you. Okay, Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Feeney, and I am the supervisor for the North Carolina collection at the Forsyth County Public Library in Winston-Salem.
And Dr. Waters.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Darren Waters. I'm the Deputy Secretary of the Office of Archives and History. And I get the pleasure of working with a wonderful team here. Glad to be here with you this morning.
And Catherine.
Hi, good morning. I'm Catherine Cutsall. I am the collection manager at Buncombe County Special Collections at Pack Library in Asheville.
And Sharon.
I am Sharon Davis, Register of Deeds of Durham County, North Carolina.
And Scarlett.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Scarlett Hargis, a paralegal in the Office of the Governor and Chief Records Officer for the agency.
And Aaron.
I'm Erin Larimore. I'm the University Archivist and Student Engagement Coordinator at UNC Greensboro Special Collections and University Archives.
Have you always had that second title, or is that new?
Oh no, the "and" is new.
Okay, I didn't remember that, but that sounds exciting.
There aren't, in the state, aren't we all required to have multiple jobs now?
I think you are. I think that is probably a rule, probably. I'm sure you are great at that with student engagement. So I know that's probably extra work, but good to hear. And I know Drew was here, but he must still be having technical difficulties. So if he pops back in, Drew Reisinger is the Register of Deeds from Buncombe County, and also on the board. So welcome everyone again. And we'll just run through our agenda here. The first couple items were the approval of minutes from the June 1st and October 5th meetings of last year. Did anyone see anything they needed corrected? I feel like we could probably do this in one motion if there's no corrections or additions to be made. If someone wants to throw a motion out there.
I motion we approve the minutes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second from
Okay.
Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. Okay. All those in favor of approving the June 1st and October 5th meeting minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, sounds good. That was the easy part. Okay, now usually on the agenda, we leave a few minutes just for some kind of general updates from Darren's Office of Archives and History and then our division. So I would defer to Darren if he's got some things he wants to share from the department.
Everybody, and especially my folks out there in Buncombe County, where I'm from. So good to see you, Catherine. Just a couple of things. Sarah and I met this morning, talked over a few things. There's a lot going on in the department, but a couple of things I'll address is we're going through the whole budget process now. And as I told Sarah this morning, I said I would greatly appreciate the fact that the secretary has put great emphasis on the fact that the history department has been underfunded for years, and we need to kind of enhance the funding for this side of the department. And so in our recent meeting with OSBM, that was the topic of discussion. So I deeply appreciate that, and the secretary and the department's commitment to ensuring that the history side of the so we're really emphasizing that. I turn it over to Sarah if she wants to take it anytime she wants to have to deal with those meetings. Also, I'm happy to talk and Sarah will address this a little bit more, but talk about a retreat that we held for the Office of Archives, not Archives and History, but Archives and the Division for Archives and Records, just a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Time kind of runs together around here. But this was the first time, I think, Sarah, that we were able to do this in a while, and it brought the entire team together from across the state, gave them an opportunity to kind of be in conversation and interact with each other. I was deeply appreciative of the fact that everyone fully engaged in that process and the discussions that we had around the table. I think some really good ideas came out from that, and so we're looking forward to where things go from here. I'll let Sarah address that a little bit more from her perspective, but I thought it was very productive that we all spent together a couple of weeks ago. So just talk about the fact, I think that we've already addressed and announced that the American Indian Heritage Commission was created in the last budget cycle. Deputy Secretary Tracy Burns oversees that commission. The commission has been stood up, so it is kind of fully since past 6 full work. I was just in conversation with my other colleague here, the Deputy Secretary of the Natural Resources Department, and we're talking about how we're really working to enter into all across the department. Sarah and her team are working hard to do that as well. So we're looking forward to what that collaboration will actually produce. I want to continue to thank Sarah for being open and her team for being open to just kind of exploring new ways that we can work with you all across the state. We've been in conversation with, especially with Drew and folks out in Buncombe County, on some new initiatives that we're kind of taking up here. You'll be hearing more about that. Sarah may say a little bit more about that. And kind of still new to this team here is the openness and the willingness to kind of really look for ways that we can kind of connect with people across the state, with communities across the state. And I want to thank Sarah for that. Before I stepped into this role, the department had all up a new initiative in partnership with Cultural Resources, an outside firm that has been an assessment, a visitor assessment survey of many of our sites and museums. We're in the second phase of that work now. Sarah actually volunteered to have the archives, the Division of Archives and Records, open up for that assessment as well. We're in the process of seeing what those findings are. But we're also beginning the stage of implementation of some of the recommendations that they had in the phase. And so we're working in partnership with Carolina Public Humanities to begin some of that work. And I think it's going to really create some new opportunities for the department to engage with our community, and especially with the university system in a very, I think, new and kind of innovative way. So those are some of the things that are going on in the Office of Archives and History and across the department in general. Sarah, I'll be glad to kind of turn it over to you. And if there's anything else you want to talk about in detail, I know you do that. But again, I want to thank you for your service to this board. This is deeply appreciate you all do to really enhance, the work of preserving the records and the culture across. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waters. I'll follow up on a couple things that he said, and some of my things are just kind of more informational and some are a little bit deeper. But to his comments about the staff retreat, well, that was a really good opportunity for us to all gather together. We spent the second half of the retreat looking at our draft strategic goals, because that's been the other focus, is we've been doing a strategic planning process. And that was a good opportunity for the staff to kind of have some deeper discussions about our goals. So our goals seem very high level, but I'll read them out to you and you can kind of get a sense of where our emphasis is going to be. Collect NC, which is really about making sure that we are collecting materials that speak to all the history of our state and, even into modern time periods. Uplift our stories is really a goal designed to be thinking about how we're using our stories to connect with communities and to make sure that we are doing all we can to make our records more accessible. We have a goal about prioritizing collection stewardship that kind of looks like two different things. It's not just our own facilities, but what can we do to help records creators and collectors across the state care for their own records. And we have a goal about facilitating community engagement, which really puts a lot of emphasis on making sure that we are connecting with communities across the state to help really deepen people's engagement and culture. And then advanced staff development, because we've kind of recognized that there needs to be done to make sure that our staff are up to speed on all the things that they need to do their job effectively and creatively as we're, moving into the future of the archives. So those are our goals. And that was a good opportunity. Everyone kind of divided up into small groups and was able to sit and talk about each goal and think about where their work intersected with those goals. So that was really productive. Couple informational things for you. I know I've talked in the past about adding a new position that came in the budget a year ago to be a records analyst to serve the communities down east that had been impacted by multiple hurricanes. That position, we were finally able to fill that position. That's a long and arduous process. Only to budgeting is to getting a new position filled. But that position is based in New Bern and she just started, and Leonard is her name. So we'll probably introduce her at the registers meeting in March, but she's just getting started and ready to work with our records custodians in the eastern part of the state. So we're excited to have her. We are going to be undergoing a of our digital collections platform. For those of you that like to use our collections, we're moving Content DM and into Cortex. So that's been taking up a lot of staff time as well. And that'll just be look for that in the spring. We're going to have undergoing a little shift there with our digital collections set up. We do share that instance with the state library, so we're working on this together. Darren mentioned the Lord Cultural Resources Assessment. We're just getting our preliminary feedback back from them. A lot of it is stuff that we kind of already know that we're challenged. We're like, everybody speaks English in the search room. We don't opportunities or people who are visually impaired. So things kind of new, but have someone from the outside come in and look at what we're doing with our patrons. Some places that you could improve upon or maybe change things up a little bit to allow for more accessibility of the collections. So we're excited to start working through their feedback on that. We are going forward with planning a workshop with the North Carolina Genealogical Society and the Friends of the Archives here in this building in May 19th and 20th, focusing on North Carolina and the American Revolution. And that's going to have lots of different speakers. It's not just focused on military history or just genealogy, but we're getting into a lot of trying to find a broad group of speakers that can talk about different groups and their and it's about people and places in North Carolina 250 years ago. So more on that as we get ready to advertise that, but I'm excited that that's moving. And then as Dr. Waters mentioned, we are one of our projects that we're working on is scanning a record series that the Register of Deeds will be familiar with, the Cohabitation Records. These are a series that were created immediately post-Civil War for ways for formerly enslaved people to register their marriages in the counties. And so that several counties have records that survive, and we're doing scanning of what we have on hand and then borrow from other counties where they remain in the county, aggregate those into a large online digital collection. So more on that to come too as that collection launches, and we're ready to talk more about those records and what they mean for history and for families and for genealogists and things. And then finally, our big news, we're working on this things, but I had submitted to Representative Price's office a request for a community program funding, which is a fancy word for an earmark. And he did accept that proposal, and he put it through with the budget, and it did make it all the way through the federal budgeting process. Now he has since retired, so his replacement, Representative Fushi, her office has been talking with me about it, but that's been pretty exciting. So it's not a huge amount of money. It's about $150,000, but it will start a program for us where we're going to call DocsBox, which is really a primary source education materials for teachers using our collections. And so we're hoping to get at least one, maybe two good ones ready, and then we can build off that and maybe make that into a permanent resource at the archives. But the funding will allow us to hire a year. It will help fund like the production of physical creation of them and mailing of them to county schools. So it's basically modeled on what Tennessee did and around suffrage, because they were the state, not North Carolina, that pushed female suffrage over the top. For that anniversary, their General Assembly had provided funding to mail their primary source document kits to the schools for free. So I was like, well, that's a great model for make that really low entry for any school. So that's what we're going to get started on. So we're in the process of talking to the National Archives. They're the ones that will be distributing the funding on how that project all gets set up. And we have to, do a budget, and it's a lot like a grant. You have to have deliverables and things like that. So we're gonna be sketching that out for them. But that's pretty exciting to have that support. I know that was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions. I didn't mean to throw a ton of information. Any questions on anything or the 1776 Constitution in North Carolina? So my preliminary thought is formation of a constitution, and then an exploration of, who's not included in here, what's not included, what is different from today, to kind of draw towards a more modern view of voting and government and participation in government. So that's what I'm thinking about, because that's kind of a neat document, the Thoughts on Government document, and first state constitution. So that's what I'm leaning towards. So, but with the America 250 theme, again, if we can kind of make this a permanent program, one of our thematic frameworks is When Are We Us, which designed to be very inclusive timeline wise and story wise. So I think, if we start with that, that kind of lends itself to going towards voting rights, because we also have a lot of good voting rights materials and that talk and demonstrate the evolution of voting rights. So from, like I tell school kids, if we're doing an exhibit from, this many people could vote to broader, and how that's kind of a march through time. It's not a time where, like I tell kids, freedom didn't drop from the sky in 1776 and everyone's like, woo, yay, we're all free. So that's what I'm thinking. That's a good place for us to be, because we've got a lot of records that support that. So, like, because for example, one thing we have in our vault collection that I like to show on tours, we have a rare copy of the Constitutional Reader from 1903. And that was a book that was designed to help men overcome the newly instituted literacy test in the Constitution. So if they finally take that out of the Constitution, like I've been hearing some talk about, that'll, I think, raise awareness of that part of our state's history. And then we've got that original document that can go with it. So. Okay. All righty. Get to my agenda here. So the meat of our meeting is to talk a little bit about our current grant, what's going on there, and then think about the next grant application and what we want to kind of finalize that to look like. So about our current grant, we've got a few things on the agenda there. The Traveling Archivist Program consultations, we finished up the 2022 ones, which, just to remind you, that was the Dare County Library, Museum of Cherokee Indian, Brevard Library, the Winston-Salem African American Archives, Durham Tech Community College Library, and the North Carolina Black Repertory Theater group, which is also in Winston-Salem. So I don't know, Adrian, do you or Brooke want to speak to anything about the current application that's open?
Well, and Brooke, I'm in, but so I sent out a summary of those applicants that we had so far. I thought we had a good group of 6 and we could probably serve them all. But since I sent you all that summary, our application pool has doubled. So we now have, and tomorrow's the deadline, so we may get a few more, but we now have 12 applicants, which is way more than we'll be able to serve this year. And so we'll definitely need to activate a selection committee from this body. Last year, Trey Adcock helped us, and this year we'll definitely tap him again, because the work's going to be much harder this year with selecting. But if any of the rest of you on this board would like to help us select, we have funds to serve 5. We might be able to squeeze in a 6th, but as far as providing preservation supplies, we just have about $250 budgeted for each recipient. So we really can't spread that much thinner and give anyone anything meaningful, even considering a starter kit of preservation supplies. So we will have to select and try to push some of the needs off maybe till the following year. So please let me know. Please send me an email or say something now if you're at all interested in being on a little selection subcommittee for that.
I can do it, Adrian.
All right, great.
And Catherine, did I see you raise your hand?
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So what we met virtually last time. We can provide the applications and to give you an opportunity to look at them, and then we had just like a virtual meeting to talk about them. So, all right. And then I included in the meeting packet Adrian's year 1 grant report that went to NHPRC, the narrative, and that talked a lot about the fall training. Included in that was the spring training dates. So those are set, and our locations are Wilmington at the Battleship on February 27th. And we're going to be in Edenton in March 20th, and then May 8th in Raleigh at the Museum of History. So anything, Adrian, we need to add about spring training or that schedule?
No, registration's going well. Of course, the Wilmington one is coming up in 2 weeks, little less than 2 weeks now. And we have already 20 people registered. So that's a good number. We'll be on the Battleship, which is kind of exciting, in the ward room. And we have even a couple people from the Triad area planning to join us. So I have to correspond with them and see what we might be able to help with some of their mileage expenses with some of the funds that we have allocated for helping participants travel. But yeah, that's surprising. I guess they couldn't make the one at your place, Karen, that we had in October. And so that's great that it's an interesting enough topic to draw them across the state. But those are going well. And part of that is recorded components. So I had 3 attempts at recording myself, but I think I finally got one that's going to work. And Brooke and Drew are not Drew, sorry. Brooke and David are working on theirs, and John's is already posted, but we'll probably wait to post the rest of those on-demand segments until we get to the end of the in-person workshop series.
Yeah, the only real hitch I think with the grant has been we had a component in there of some recording equipment for oral histories that people could check out. State purchasing rules have turned this into a little bit of like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill and then it falls back down. So we're just trying to tackle that and purchasing rules for that equipment. So we will persevere and make it work, but it's been a challenge up to now. So, but we'll figure that out. The other thing that's been a little bit challenging about this grant is more that we had put in some money. This is the third thing, for scholarships for people to attend training and apply for that. And we really haven't had the demand that I think we kind of anticipated when we had our strategic planning session a couple of years ago. We thought, that was a long conversation that we had, is to support folks to go to preservation training for their collections. And that really hasn't been popular. So Adrian and I were just chatting that maybe we need to think about strategies for that money, other ways to get interest in it. It's just been a challenge. So I'm looking for some input, or Adrian, if you want to add something.
Yeah, and those of you who were involved in our strategic planning process a year or so ago, this was something we thought would be tangible support for collection stewards statewide, and also help raise awareness.
Any, should we, I don't know, are there, if you have suggestions on communities we maybe have not reached, or plans, should we give it, another 2 months and then out, maybe at our next meeting, what to do as we're wrapping up the grant with the money, if it's just not being used. We're happy to take input on how we can boost. We're happy to take input on how we can connect with different folks who may, want a little bit of support to, like Adrian said, take an online class or travel to a workshop.
And maybe the $100 just isn't enough to travel anywhere. And so we haven't used average more money per scholarship, and see if we have any takers that way.
I think that seems reasonable. Let's change it. If something's not working, let's shift it somehow. It's hard to understand. It's hard to always know why something's popular or not popular. It seemed like a good idea.
Okay, so maybe we try to advertise that. Have to work out the math and see what we have, but maybe 5 at $250 each and see what happens.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone have any comments or questions about anything in particular about the current grant? I didn't send you all the attachments for the report, but we're happy to send any of those if there's one that you wanted to see. A lot of them are just kind of informational for the National Archives folks. Any questions about anything? Okay. Well, it feels like when we have meetings, we have to make you go to the Wayback Machine in your memory, but we did discuss in the last year, or it came out in the strategic planning conversation about possibly doing a program related to supporting local librarians or people on the ground in place with training on how to assist their constituents in their area on archives issues, whether that's how would say a church preserve their collections, or how would an association that serves a high school association, we've seen some of those around the state, how would they digitize their collections, or just answering questions about the care and preservation of documentary materials that are preserved at the local level. And so we've kind of been thinking about that idea, and Adrian's been trying to think through what would that look like, what would some deliverables be, but we wanted to check in to see if that's still a resonant idea. As background, Adrian had done a survey of the public libraries, because we took advantage of the state library having a good listserv to reach out into the public libraries and kind of ask some questions. Are you interested in this? What topics are of interest to you? What format would be most interesting to you? The format one was the challenging because it was like everybody wanted all the formats. So it wasn't like a clear, oh, do it all online, or oh, do it all in person. We did get feedback. It wasn't a huge pool. What was it, Adrian? Like 47 responses.
Yeah, right around 45, I think.
So do you want to speak to that survey and what you kind of saw from at least that sampling?
So I'd say there may not have been a giant push that we really need this, but there were certainly folks who said, yes, we've had these questions and we could use some assistance. So I'm thinking through it, and I think certainly offering a webinar series with people like Karen and Catherine, who are experts in trying different projects with their own communities and hearing about their successes and challenges and the work they've been doing with community archiving would be great. Another topic, hearing from one of the state library staff about grant opportunities for that type of community archiving work, and assembling some other folks that we've talked about at UNC Chapel Hill to do that webinar series and not be so on the hook for traveling and replicating presentations in various regions. But there does still seem to be an appetite for getting together regionally. So I was thinking the 2025, it feels so weird to plan that far in advance, but there will be a North Carolina Library Association meeting in 2025. And so that could be a good time to address this topic in person, and then maybe just a couple other regional workshops and not plan as many as we've had in this current grant cycle. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, given that, the survey went out to probably 80 some library directors. We asked them to share with their staff, and we had 40 something responses. So maybe it's not a super hot topic with just that self-selected group of respondents. And then within that group, it was probably about 2/3 having some level of interest in the topic. So I'm thinking there's a modest interest and need, and we'll shape the grant accordingly. But what we could do is produce some handouts, maybe a little guide for libraries themselves, and then some handouts they can share that would be branded with SHRAB. So I just kind of offered that sketch. We have a deadline of a draft tomorrow. The deadlines have all been pushed forward earlier into the year, which is never a good surprise, but the grant application itself will be due in May. So we definitely have time to work on it. And I think that the National Archives staff is very strapped right now, and we may not get any feedback at all, but I can certainly send that sketch that I shared with you all, and I have a little bit more of a narrative written describing the survey and what the conception is of this project that I can share and at least get that kind of feedback. But any ideas from you, anything that you think is a need that could be a chunk of money, because there is a pot of money in the National Archives, and we asked for some, and some of it some ideas we have generate a lot of work on our end, like these mini travel stipends for workshop attendees. That's a separate contract for each workshop attendant. So that's probably not the kind of thing that is really a good use of time versus money versus positive effect on our audience. But, you know, printed materials, if you're looking at some design and some printing and then postage, that's a chunk of money. So anything like that, we can add it in there. Just want to make sure that it's useful for people, I think.
And I will say that Adrian had also talked about circling back to the TAP visits, asking for more money for preservation supplies, because what she's been seeing in the last couple of years is what we had budgeted for that to kind of leave behind with our visits is just not enough. So trying to up that a little bit to get a few more things for each visit for sure.
Yeah, because just a box of archival folders is $100. So you want to give them at least one box and a few other supplies too. And so for the next cycle, I want to ask for at least $500 for each recipient instead of $250.
Any feedback on that kind of hybrid plan to think about webinars, a couple of selected in-person things, some printed or branded guides? Does that?
I like that a lot. And if we do webinars and printed materials, then it'll be easy to include links to the webinars on the printed materials. And that can kind of hang out. And I know like we get those things from Gaylord sometimes, those little handbooks, but it would be so nice to have something just kind of like that around to give an idea of like what I'm doing, what's Karen doing, what some other North Carolina collection down east doing, and then to be able to kind of pull your own ideas from that would be a nice resource to have.
Yeah, and maybe we could also think about mining some of the TAP application needs that they've identified in terms of training, so that we could support the local librarians in understanding those concepts if there's a popular type of question or need. I think things like maybe a little bit of basic arrangement description guidance would be good, because that seems to kind of be something that a lot of the TAP recipients ask about is, I've got this stuff, I've collected the stuff now, how do I make it more accessible, or how do I make it more discoverable? So that might be good.
Yeah, that's something we've really struggled with here because we haven't had a content management system or anything like that. So we've had our finding aids on PDFs, and trying to put those online is not the best a lot of the times because it's usually buried behind link and link and link and link. So people don't really access our archives because they don't know that we have it. So they can't access our collection information. So we're remedying that, but it's a long process and it's expensive. So
something similar that's come up with us is that we've done a great job at marketing ourselves as a resource, and now we're overwhelmed. And so we've got like, you know, community organizations coming and chomping at the bit to have their papers like put here, which is great. And we're so happy about it. However, what we're running into is like expectations on the organization's end, because they think, you know, they see our digital collections and they're like, oh, this is going to be done in 2 weeks. And it's like, I kind of had an uncomfortable conversation with a donor the other day about how it may be 5 years before I even think about digitizing this stuff, just because of the kind of research value that it holds. And so some sort of publication that really like breaks down the archival process and how long some of this stuff takes, it can take, you know, hours and hours and hours to even get things out of one box into another to where they're just safe to store. So that's been a big issue with me lately with community partners, is just not a shared understanding of the true full amount of time and labor that goes into this process.
And also maybe something on indexing, because that's something we do with our maps. Because I mean, even if they're not stored, sometimes indexing them helps people access them too. I think that people don't love to do those, but it's very helpful when you have, like, we have a bunch of Board of Election scrapbooks that were just falling apart. Like, you just opened it and all the articles are just sliding to the middle. So we had volunteers indexing all those. So now we know what's in them, and we don't have to actually access the books, because we can go right to the newspaper microfilm and pull up the article rather than having to go to the scrapbook. So it was a long process, but it was, I mean, it helps access too. So maybe that's something we could leave in there.
Any other thoughts, additions? Those are good ideas, good input. Okay. Well, we'll try to flesh this out and see what we can get for deliverables and a finalized budget in time for their May deadline. Anything else, Adrian, you want to talk about with the new grant application?
No, I don't think so. It's
Okay.
kind of, yeah, where we are with it, but please, I invite any ideas. It's still in the nebulous form. So until May, and I don't remember the exact date that's due, but I think the 15th. So please feel free to get in touch and share your ideas if some light bulb pops up in your head.
Yeah, especially for those of you that are in a library or, setting up in a county level, like what is there Adrian had identified the North Carolina Library Association. Is there a different gathering that might be really productive to hit a lot of people? That might be something you could reflect on and give her some feedback on. Like, if we're going to put our, money into just a couple of in-person meetings, what's a good place to reach folks? So that's
Sarah, I'm not sure if Clark has emailed you this, but the North Carolina Community College Archives Association has set their meeting date for this year. It's August the something.
I think it's August 4th.
Yes, August 4th in Asheboro.
Okay. All right. Well, come to the kind of administration sort of stuff. I thought I like to give you guys some advocacy updates from a national level. Believe last time I had commented on the nomination for the new Archivist of the United States. In the previous Congress, she did not get a favorable report out from committee in the Senate. So her nomination was reintroduced not too long ago, in the last month. And I haven't heard that there's been a committee hearing scheduled yet, but that they will probably hear a committee hearing on her nomination. So that stay tuned. I think they feel like it will have a better opportunity to come out with a favorable report. Although with the National Archives in the news a lot, I think they're expecting a lot of questions related to many stories that intersect with the National Archives in her hearing. But stay tuned for that. There are several National Archives associations that are planning on doing another advocacy day on Capitol Hill in July. That's been on hold since the pandemic, but we did one of these about 4.5-5 years ago, maybe. So they call it Archives on the Hill, and it's a combination effort of the Society of American Archivists, the Council of State Archivists, and NAGARA, which is a national group of archives and records administrators. So in the records management side of the house as well. And also, I forgot, also RAC, which is a consortium of regional archival groups. So like, for example, SNCC, the Society of North Carolina Archivists, participates in RAC. So it's like that state level or regional level archives association. So they're also involved in the planning. So we're just getting started. We will probably lean heavily on some other groups to help us with, identifying really key Senate and House members, which offices to go visit, us with that sort of logistical end, but they're starting to think about messages and what they want to say. But it'll be in conjunction with a big national meeting in DC. And it's just going to be a day where folks can sign up and they'll get how to do these advocacy meetings with their congressional representatives and talk about the importance of records and preservation of our history at a local level too. So I can certainly keep you posted on that, but I'm glad that's going to be back. I'm on the steering committee for that, so I certainly will have more details as that's unfolding if you have any questions.
Sarah, if there are any important North Carolina members of Congress you want us to, if that might be in one of our districts, let us know. We'd be glad to advocate to them.
Okay, yeah, I will. We haven't gotten to that level of like which district yet, but I'm sure they will, because they do a lot of that review of who's on what committee and who's what chair and that sort of thing. So I'm sure that's and then we'll try to figure that out. But thank you, I will. And just kind of in general with the humanities funding picture from the national level, the humanities programs did very well with the National Archives, Institute of Museum and Library Services, National Endowment for Humanities, all getting increases in their budget. And I think that Adrian mentioned earlier that the NHPRC folks at the National Archives are very overwhelmed. Part of that's because they got a huge amount of earmarks flowing into their budget because they are an agency that allows that. The granting agencies like IMS or NEH, you can't put, I believe, but you put it at the National Archives. And so I think there was something like $30 million in earmark checks that are going through there. So they've got a lot of work to do. But it shows, I think, and I would, encourage everybody to pay attention as federal earmark guidelines come out with the new Congress to think about if there's projects that might be worthwhile, because you don't get anything if you don't ask. I'll be your witness to that. So I think that's it's worthwhile, advocating on a local level with your representatives and senators about the needs, just general needs for preservation of our documentary heritage. So that's kind of my advocacy updates. I don't know if anybody has something they want to add from your level, questions, anything that we should have on our. Anything exciting going on besides being. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's been great. In just the past few years, there's been a lot of attention directed our way, which is cool. And fingers crossed that ultimately results in additional staffing, because right now, I don't want to complain. We're very well staffed for the small archives, but we're starting to get lots of sort of administrative requests about doing research and performing a research role for things like reparations, and it's great, and we really enjoy doing that work. But we're a little overwhelmed with that right now. But there's some really cool stuff going on. Buncombe County has a new library director. I'll share that. He got started into last week. He came from York County, South Carolina, so from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and his name's Jason Hyatt. Great guy, settling in really well so far, and loves special collections. So I'm very excited about that. I was super worried when Jim Blanton left that I would end up with somebody who, felt kind of indifferent about archives and special collections, but he's fully on board. So that's really exciting. But there's a lot going on here, and we're trying to just kind of keep moving forward while also pumping the brakes. Something trying to do, but in particular with community archiving stuff, we've partnered with a few groups here locally. Asheville, Buncombe County is full of nonprofits, and we have bits and pieces of a lot of their papers, but we're starting to set up formal MOUs with different organizations just so that we've got some sort of retention schedule, basically, about, once a year, Greenworks will drop off the flash drive, and this is what will be on it, and this is how things will be named. And so far, so good. We're in our second year of 2 different MOUs with community organizations in that way, and it's working out great. So, but yeah, busy and bumping.
That might be a good topic for training too is MOUs with local groups. That might be, I mean, I know that's not very sexy, but it's important to have those things figured out.
It's
So
not, but I mean, one of the ones that we did last year is kind of hilarious. It's the Pen and Plate Club, which Dr. Waters knows all about. Dr. Waters is a member of the Pen and Plate Club, or was. It's just a fraternal organization that gets together and makes speeches, kind of like Toastmasters. And we've been collecting their papers at the library since 1906. So before we were a free public library, even, we've been collecting the Pen and Plate Club, and it is only in the last 6 months that we have a formal agreement with the Pen and Plate Club about how things come in, and use restrictions and that kind of stuff, just making it very clear. You know, with a group like this on paper, some folks were kind of nervous about their stuff being super publicly accessible. I think one of the rules is you're supposed to write about something that you aren't an expert in. They're not formally cited. And so that was part of the MOU, was making sure that it said in there, you know, if you turn your paper over to the secretary, you know that it is coming to the library, you know, just kind of doing those little things. But Pen and Plate Club would be a really good training example. Just to talk about, you know, I have been collecting this group stuff for years and years and years, but let's try to set up. So it also includes like rules for born digital nomenclature and things like that. And folks have been really good about saving their papers in PDFs and naming them the way that we want them to be named. And we got in a new like 5 gigabytes of material from them this year. So but yeah, I'd be happy to talk about some of the MOUs that we've done. I think that's Asheville Greenworks and Pen and Plate and one other, or we're working with City of Asheville right now for the fire department.
Okay.
And I do think that sounds really useful for community college archives too. There seems to be an endless appetite for new topics from us for their events. So, because I know some of them work with similar organizations that do regular programs and lectures and that sort of thing. And they're collecting, I know Sandhills in particular does that, but I'm sure there are several others. So
just to give folks a little update on the community college archives group. One of the things that is new and has been newly formed there is an archives consultant committee. They wanted a handful of university archivists across the state that they could go to with questions. And so we actually just had our first virtual meeting a week or so ago. We're currently working on writing up a both an FAQ list, but also kind of a mission statement for this group that both outlines what it would do and what it's not. We want to make it clear that it's not tap visits, that it is give us a call, and you know, if you just need somebody to chat with for a few minutes, to ask like, what do I do with this old videotape? That it's more that. But for those who are interested, it's me, as well as Alston Coburn, who's the University Archivist at East Carolina, Jean Hyde, who's the University Archivist at UNC Asheville, Kim Sims, who's the University Archivist and Head of Special Collections at App State, and Katie Howell, who's the University Archivist at UNC Charlotte.
Cool. Thank you, Erin. Appreciate that. Any other updates from anybody? That's good stuff. Okay. Well, one thing we can do to kind of set our schedule is, since we have a quorum, is set a meeting schedule, and just kind of following our basic pattern of 3 meetings a year. That would put us in June and October, and looking at the second Tuesday of the month, if we want to keep it there, that would be June 13th and October 10th. I know that's kind of preliminary. Does that sound good to folks? Do we want to, do we have a motion for that? Then we could vote on it.
Go for it.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to do those dates as you put forward, Sarah.
Okay.
I haven't looked at my calendar, but that far out, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, I know. It's like act now when my calendar is open. We'll get it on there.
I second it.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of June 13th and October 10th as our remaining meetings, say aye or raise your hand.
Hi.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, that sounds good. Any other business before we adjourn? Okay, cool. Well, we have something in the meantime that you need to bring to our attention, or something that might be useful for a TAP knowledge, and Catherine and Karen will be in touch about the applications. And we thank you all very much. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Adrian.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.